Good morning and welcome to the 16th Annual Groundhog Day Economic Summit. I'm with the City of Monroe, and in partnership with the Union County Chamber of Commerce, we are honored to serve you today and privileged to have you with us. I'm Teresa Campo, and I am the Director of the Economic Development Office, and it is truly my honor to serve you. Before we begin, I would like to take this moment to remember the loss of individuals and to honor their memory and to be in prayer for their families during this very difficult time. And we thank you for that. In a normal year, we would have the groundhog and look to see whether or not he's seen his shadow. But this year, winter sent a snowy message to us. So, that's right. So thank you. Thank you for delaying Groundhog Day and being with us 1 month later. Did everyone have some Alice Jewell's coffee? Delicious coffee. Thanks to Lawrence and Associates providing us that pleasure this morning. As we discuss our economic future, you in this room remind us how far we have come. And we'll be sharing your story later in this program. Today, we'll hear from Monroe's mayor about the state of our economy, followed by Dr. Michael Walden, who will share thoughtful insights about our region's economy and about Monroe and Union County. Thank you to our Energy Services Department for providing this valuable resource. Please stay until the end, as we have a special gift that we'd like to share with you that we know you will find value in. It is actually sponsored by Electricities of North Carolina, and we thank them for that. So if we could give an applause to our sponsors, we'd appreciate that, honoring them. This is the second year that the City of Monroe and the Union County Chamber of Commerce have partnered at this event, and this has been a very successful turnout, and we thank them for their partnership, and thank you for being with us. We would be remiss if we didn't thank our mayor and our city council, who support business and are strong in our economy and our resources. If you're an elected official, would you please stand so that we can recognize you, whether with our jurisdiction or any jurisdiction? Thank you so much. We'd like to give a special appreciation to our city manager, who is strong business-minded, and he protects our resources and serves our city very well. Him and his staff of assistant city managers, Hollowell and Wells, we appreciate them. Again, an applause for them. We would also like to recognize our Economic Development Advisory Board, who provides valuable input, policies and processes for us, and also serves as ambassadors of our cities. If we could give them a hand, we'd appreciate that. Thank you. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our mayor and my friend when we welcome the Honorable Mayor Robert Burns to the stand, please.
All right, good morning, Monroe. Good morning. It's a great day to celebrate progress in a city that refuses to stand still. As our nation approaches America 250, 250 years of freedom, enterprise, self-governance, we are reminded that America's strengths has always been built in communities just like ours. Not from the top down, but from towns that believe in hard work, strong families, safe streets, and bold leadership. And that is exactly what Monroe represents. And since this conversation started around Groundhog Day, let me say, in Monroe, we don't wait to see if a groundhog sees its shadow to decide our future. We build our own future. Over the last year, we haven't just talked about economic growth, we've produced it. But before we talk about square footage and development, we must talk about the foundations of every thriving economy: safety. Over the past year, Monroe has seen approximately a 30% decrease in crime. 30%. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because the city council stood unified because our police chief led with focus and strength, and because our officers were supported, equipped, and empowered. And when we support law enforcement, businesses invest, families stay, and communities thrive. That's right. And I'll tell you, when families sleep better at night, mayors do too. The respected leadership authority, John Maxwell, reminds us, everything rises and falls on leadership. And Monroe chose leadership. We will never separate public safety from economic development because safe communities attract stable investment, and stable investments build generational prosperity. Last year, about a little before last year, we cast a bold vision. This year, that vision is fully operational. The Greater Monroe Economic Development Department is structured, staffed, and driving measurable results. Under the leadership of Teresa Campo and Donna O'Keefe, we have built a focused, aggressive, and business-minded operation. And here is what it looks like. There is nearly 1 million square feet of commercial and industrial opportunity currently being negotiated and reviewed. That's not theoretical, it's active. Businesses are calling us every single day. Developers are evaluating our sites. Deals are being structured and secured. Our city manager probably sees more square footage in a week than most real estate professionals in 1 year. Monroe is not chasing growth. Growth is calling Monroe. And we're making disciplined deals. Deals that protect taxpayers, strengthen our workforce, and benefit our citizens first. Because in Monroe, the people always come first. Now, let me be clear. Growth is not about how much comes in. It's about what comes in. The great business strategist Peter Drucker once said, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." We're not waiting to see what Monroe becomes. We are shaping it strategically, intentionally, and responsibly. And our founding father, James Madison, the architect of our Constitution, reminded us, the advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only guardian of true liberty. Think about that. That principle applies to economic development as well. Growth without discipline is reckless. Growth with principle builds legacy. As we celebrate America 250, we remember that America became the strongest economy in the world, not by accident, but by encouraging enterprise, rewarding work, protecting property, and empowering local communities. That is the model Monroe is following. Quantity fills space, but quality builds a legacy. We are one of few full-service cities in North Carolina. We control our electric, natural gas, water, sewer, and some fiber. That means when opportunity knocks, we don't wait unless you're flipping a page. We don't stall. We act. Now, I know government isn't always known for speed either, right? Many of you back there say amen. But Monroe has proven that we can move when it matters. That independence, that local control is the American model. And 250 years later, it still works. So before I close, I want to say thank you to every business owner here, large and small, our manufacturers and entrepreneurs, our developers and investors, our bankers and workforce partners, our chamber leadership, our city staff, our law enforcement officers and the fire department, to the employees who show up every single day and power this local economy. Thank you. You are the engine of Monroe's success. Government can create the environment, but you create the opportunity. We see you, we value you, and we are committed to ensuring that Monroe remains a place where your business can grow safely and profitably. That's number one. Monroe's success is not the work of one office either. It's the work of a unified community. And for that, I am truly grateful. And I'll close with this. When the meetings are over and the numbers are reviewed, I go home to my wife and 6 children. That's right, 6 of them. And I don't think first about square footage. I think about the kind of city that they will grow up in. I think about whether we made decisions that were bold but wise, aggressive but disciplined, forward-looking but grounded in values. As a husband and father, I don't just want Monroe to grow. I want it to grow right. Because long after America celebrates 300 years, someone will live in a Monroe shaped by the decisions that we are making today. And if we continue leading with strength, unity, and discipline, Monroe will not just grow, it will lead. So the best days of Monroe are ahead. Let's keep building, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you. I do want to also introduce the new Chamber President, Clayton Whitson. Thank you.
You know, I thought I had a busy schedule until I heard Mayor Burns talking about all 6 of his children. I don't envy that. I am Clayton Whitson. I am the president and CEO of the Union County Chamber of Commerce. And my sole responsibility here today is to apologize for the scheduling delay. Unfortunately, the North Carolina Tourism Office wanted to make me feel welcome as a recent transplant from snowy Indiana, so they welcomed me with 8 inches of snow here so that I would feel at home. They didn't know we had this event supposed to go on Groundhog Day. They also gave me the very helpful hint of purchasing stock in the bread and milk manufacturers in North Carolina anytime we're looking at inclement weather, so I appreciate those tips. All kidding aside, it is my privilege and honor to be here today. We are so incredibly grateful for our partnership with the City of Monroe. At the Chamber, we are constantly striving to improve the business climate and quality of life here in Monroe and Union County, and they are invaluable partners in that mission, and we love working alongside them in a collaborative environment. Off stage, I had an opportunity to speak with our main presenter today, and he informed me that he has done, over his career, over 4,000 of these economic outlook summits. To call him a subject matter expert would be an understatement. But Michael Walden, PhD, is a William Neal Reynolds Distinguished Professor Emeritus at North Carolina State University and president of Walden Economic Consulting, LLC. During his 43 years on the faculty at NC State, Walden became recognized as an expert on the state economy and public policy. He is the author of 15 books and over 330 articles and reports, and he has made over 3,200 personal appearances. We're going to bump that number up a little bit. Walden also is a frequent contributor at the national and state media and has appeared on all the major national news outlets. He writes a bi-weekly newspaper column distributed throughout North Carolina. Walden serves on several public committees and commissions, including the Governor's COVID Business Advisory Group and the NC First Transportation Commission. He has won numerous awards, including 2 Champion Tuck Awards for Excellence in Broadcasting, the UNC Board of Governors Award for Excellence in Public Service, the Halliday Medal for Excellence from North Carolina State University, and the Order of the Longleaf Pine presented by the North Carolina's governor. His upcoming book about the future of North Carolina economy will be published in the University of North Carolina Press in 2026. Walden is a member of the North Carolina Economic Development Association, and he resides in Raleigh with his wife, Mary. Please help me give a very Monroe welcome to Dr. Michael Walden.
Well, Clayton and I have something in common. We're both from the Midwest. I'm from Ohio. He's from Indiana, and it shows you people end up in North Carolina, in Monroe. Well, my job today is to hopefully provide you with some good educational knowledge about the economy, but also be a little entertaining. I like to think my presentations are conversations. And two things to mention off the bat. I've been through Monroe many times. Usually it's when I'm coming back from Charlotte. So this is the first time I've actually stopped in Monroe and seen Monroe. And so I did a little research on Monroe. Obviously, you probably know that your town is named after James Monroe, president. But the Union County, I was actually pleasantly surprised to read about how the name Union County came about, and it had to do with the fact that when this area was being considered for incorporation as a county, at this time, this was the early 1800s, we had two parties, Democrats and Whigs, and each of them wanted the county to be named after one of their prominent politicians. Couldn't get agreement, so what they did, they agreed to disagree and simply call it Union. So I thought that was a very, very interesting background on how your name became Union County. All right, let me move ahead. And am I going to go ahead here? Our clicker person will, here we go. Okay, economic growth. I'm going to run through a lot of slides. I forgot the entertainment part. I do have a joke. Economists do have jokes. The joke has to do with a colleague of mine who retired before I did. And unlike me, who wanted to continue working in the economics field, he wanted to do things totally different than economics. And one of his goals was to learn how to skydive. So he signed up for a course on skydiving, took lessons, did trial jumps with being attached to a professional. And so the day of his solo jump, first solo jump comes up. He's real excited. His family's excited. His family are waiting at the jump site. They're going to film him as he drops and hits successfully. So he jumps out of the plane, hits ground. No broken bones, all fine, except he's way off course. Something about the wind. Doesn't see his family. Doesn't see anything except cornfields. So he stands there for a while. He's trying to sort of collect his thoughts. What's he going to do? And then he sees in the distance a speck. And the speck keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger as it comes toward him. And it turns out it's a man. It's a farmer. And so the skydiver says to the farmer, "Where am I?" And the farmer says, "Well, you're in my cornfield." And now the skydiver's not had a good day, so he's a little peeved. And he looks back at the farmer and says, "You must be an economist." And the farmer looks a little surprised. He said, "Well, actually, I took courses at NC State in agricultural economics. Yeah, I guess you could call me an economist. Why do you say that?" Skydiver says, "Because you told me something that was absolutely true, but of no use to me whatsoever." So I like to lower expectations by telling that joke. And so anything that you get out of this, you will find productive. Okay, I'm going to be looking at the slides at the same you are. These are the slides I'm going to talk first about growth. We have this concept that economists do called GDP, gross domestic product. Probably a lot of you follow that. It's just a measure of everything that people in the economy do, everything that's produced, all services, all collapse into one number. It's our go-to number for seeing if the economy is growing and how fast it's growing. And I've got United States, North Carolina, Charlotte Metro, and Union County here. And you can see that 2018 to 2023, all growing. But notice that you in Union County, you're the highest among all of those categories, all those geographical categories. Now, 2023 to 2025, unfortunately, in the world of statistics, the smaller the area is, the longer it takes to get the numbers. So we don't have the numbers for Charlotte Metro, Union County, but you can see that there's been a little bit of a slowdown in growth at the U.S. and the North Carolina level, but I'm sure that when these numbers come out for Union County, you'll be very positive. If we look at employment trends, the middle of both these slides, you can see the big drop in employment. This is the unemployment rate. Big jump in the unemployment rate in the middle of the screen. That's COVID. Obviously, if you shut down about 25% of the economy, you're going to get a rise in the unemployment rate. Very quick rebound in the sense of lowering unemployment, But when I draw your attention to that right now, we've had a little bit of uptick, and I'll talk about that, in the unemployment rate, both in North Carolina and in the U.S. Nothing to really get excited about or really worried about, but there has been a little bit of an uptick in the unemployment rate. Let's see, am I controlling? Yeah, here we go. In the Charlotte Metro and Union County side, you see the same pattern, big jumps during COVID, but a very sharp drop in the unemployment rate after COVID ended. And right now you can see, again, a little upward tick for unemployment in North Carolina, a little bit of upward tick here, but actually if you look at the numbers, and compared them to the previous slide, you're still lower in terms of unemployment rate compared to the nation. And job openings, you might hear a lot about, and you may have heard a lot about the disappointing job openings. There just aren't as many businesses wanting to offer jobs. And this is a graph that shows you, yeah, that's right. We've had a little bit of downward trend in the job opening trends. And again, you can see the U.S. and North Carolina, don't have these for Union County, have trended downward. But again, North Carolina is looking better, higher job openings than at the national level. If we look at, let me pause here a minute, AI. I get asked a lot about AI. How's AI going to affect the labor market? A lot of concerns about AI is going to destroy a lot of jobs. It's going to create a lot of jobs. Also, big difference of opinion among economists and others on whether it's going to be a net increase or a net negative. I'm not going to get into trying to enter that argument with any new information other than to tell you that we periodically have these big technological changes that affect the economy, affect the labor market. I can remember, I'm 75 years old, so I can remember things from a long time ago. I can remember my grandfather, who was a farmer, one of my grandfathers, a farmer, telling me when I was a wee thing about how massive the invention of the tractor was for farmers, how it made his life so much better, how it made his farming operation so much more productive. And indeed, if you look at the history of that, that was a game changer for the country, because now that farmers were more productive, we didn't need as many farmers. There were mass migration of farmers off the farm and into cities just at the time that we were developing our manufacturing sector. So that shows you how massive technological change can be on the economy. Now, the last big change we had was the digital change, I'll call it, the invention of the computer. Again, I was around when we were still writing at NC State, teaching at NC State. We were still using notepads to write and typing out on the typewriter. And but we had obviously the digital age come, the internet come. That's changed the economy. It's made people like me, when I'm researching, get information much faster. So those two have been very positive. What people worry about with AI is it's a technology that's affecting a different group of people. The tractor mainly affected farmers. Things like the assembly line affected people working on the assembly line in factories. Those changes were affecting what I'll call muscle inputs. People using their brawn, people using their bodies, their physiques to produce things. AI is going to impact more cognitive inputs, because AI is a technology that is going to be able to do analysis. It's a technology that's going to be able to rapidly collect data. It's a technology that's going to be able to forecast. All of those things right now, before AI is massively used, or traditionally, are cognitive development, cognitive needs. People go to college to learn how to do analysis. People go to college to learn how to do forecasts, et cetera. And AI is potentially going to replace some of those people or dramatically change what they do. You probably have read that if you're a bookkeeper, be careful. Be careful. AI is going to come in there and do all of that. Right now I've got my taxes over at my tax preparer. He's worried about how AI is going to affect his job. So this is fundamentally going to be different in terms of how it impacts people. There's no question it's going to make the economy productive. That's one reason why the stock market's been rising recently over this last several months, as AI is now being employed in the economy investors look at this as, wow, this is great for businesses. Now, it may not be great for all workers, but it's great for businesses in terms of the bottom line. So I'm not trying to create a negative picture here, but I'm trying to give you at least a picture I see of the impacts of AI and how we need to watch this, and you need to watch your own particular situation. Okay. Retail sales is a number that we look at to gauge the economy simply because 70% of economic activity in the country is generated by retail sales. People have to spend money for our economy to continue to grow. And once again, this is starting to get redundant. You can see that there was a big drop in retail sales during COVID, a big rise in retail sales after COVID. Again, we've had some, you can see the heavy line there going across is the zero line. You can see that we've been flirting some months with actually declines in retail sales, not consistent, not perpetual, but you can see there are a couple months at the U.S. level and even here at the North Carolina level where that blue line drops below the black line, meaning that retail sales were negative. So this is another piece of evidence that goes along with the fact that job offerings have slowed down, that are giving some people, and obviously economists, some concern about what's happening to the economy. Let me do one more on this. This is debt load. Two measures of the debt load. The blue line is measuring the percentage of income that people have to devote every month to their debt payments. The red line is the savings rate. And you can see the blue line has been going up. The red line has been coming down. People are saving less, and yet they have more commitments to their debt. The reason economists worry about this is if debt gets too high to the average consumer, such that they have to devote a large percent of their money to paying their debt payments each month, what are they going to do less of? Retail sales. They're not going to be able to buy as much, and the economy slows down. So that's why economists, we of course, we have compassion for people who are over their heads in debt, but we're looking at this more from a macro point of view. Now, do notice that if you look at the blue line, it is not at an all-time high, but it could get there. We do see it going up. So a warning sign here. So a couple of warning signs here. Delinquency rates, if you look at the far right-hand side, after a big drop after COVID, but delinquency rates have been going up. You can see on the right-hand side there a little bit. So again, the picture here is forming of there's some issues in the economy, some trends in the economy that are somewhat troubling, maybe too strong a word, but they're just trends that cause us to really think about what's happening in the economy and why. And you're going to probably think to yourself, when is he going to tell us that, what's happening in the economy? All right, one more on the trends. Consumer sentiment. This comes out, there are a number of measures of this. This is where companies, or in this case, academicians, this is from University of Michigan, which is considered to be the best number on this, go out and do a survey of people, how they feel about the economy. They collect a whole bunch of information, but the one thing we look at is, are people positive about the economy or are they negative about the economy? And you can see, again, if you go to the right-hand side, that the recent trend has been down. In fact, I think at one point we set a record, at least for a number of decades, of the lowest consumer sentiment. And again, the worry here is not just that people are not feeling good, but are they going to act on that? If they don't feel good about the economy, are they going to spend? If they don't feel good about the economy, are they not going to borrow and spend big? So these are all factors that we're looking at to try to give us some sense of where the economy might be going. Okay, inflation. Probably still the biggest issue in the economy right now. And this is where people like me want to start with a lot of definitions, because if you listen to people talk about inflation, or if you listen to people in high places, not mention any names, I don't get political, people in high places talk about inflation, oftentimes they get the notion wrong. My favorite is you'll hear someone say, oh, inflation's down. And they're trying to portray that means prices are down. No, price changes and inflation are two different things. Inflation measures the rate at which prices are rising. So when you hear that the inflation rate is down, prices are still rising, but they're just going up at a smaller percent. So when people ask me, Walden, when are we going to get back to those pre-COVID prices? I hear that the inflation's down. Why aren't we back to where we were pre-COVID in prices? And I explain to them, these are two different things. These are two different things. Inflation measures how fast prices are going up. The prices, you look at change in prices, that's what it is. Now, you might be saying to me, you might ask me, well, wouldn't it be good if we had an economy where inflation was actually negative? We actually call that deflation, where prices are going down. Unfortunately, if you look at history, and we can see a couple examples here where you see a gray bar going up on the slide. That's an officially declared recession. And if you look at around 2020, you can see a gray bar there, and you can see that the inflation number actually is below the zero line, so we had prices going down. Same thing in 2008 to 2010, the so-called Great Recession or housing recession. Typically, prices go down only when the economy is lousy, when we have high unemployment, people not buying. So when people don't buy, prices are going to go down. So we really, and wages are going down also in that kind of economy. And we don't want an economy where obviously wages are going down. So I tell people, yeah, it would be nice if everything we bought went down in price and there were no other negative consequences of that, but that's not the case. So what we can best hope for is a situation where prices are rising, but they're rising at a moderate pace, but they're rising in such a way that people can still afford them. And I'll get to that slide later. If you, where did I go here? Here we go. Yeah, stay here. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see we had a burst of the inflation rate right after COVID. You can see COVID there with that narrow gray bar, and you can see a couple years after COVID. I'm going to watch my time here because I want to be a good presenter and not overdo it. You can see that. We had a big jump in the inflation rate. Look at around, well, those numbers on the bottom, legends are not right, but it's around 2022. The summer of 2022, we had an inflation rate of 13%. What's that mean? Usually inflation rates measured year over year. That means prices went up 13%, average prices. I should back up and say, what does that mean, average prices? Well, this is a sidebar. Every month, federal government sends thousands of people out into the hinterland, and they collect price data on virtually everything that we buy, products, services, big things, little things, from a house to a can of peas, and they go over the country to do that, and then they compare. If we're looking at year over year, they look at the price now compared to the price for that same product a year ago. They take all this data, put it into a computer in Washington, and it spits out what's called the Consumer Price Index, CPI, which is the average change, if you're looking year over year, in prices, average change in a price over that period of time. Now, you might say, does everything get counted equally in that average? No. The model gives much heavier, it's a weighted average, it gives much heavier prominence to things that we spend a lot of money on, like a house. Whereas a can of peas is in there, but it's not going to get much prominence in the average. So the CPI, think of that as an average price change. So if you go back to my story here, if you look at that gray bar, COVID, actually, as I said earlier, inflation went down for a couple of months there during COVID. But when we came back, we had prices going up, and then they went up. Till 2022, we had a 13% year-over-year inflation rate. I think it was June of 2022. Now, real quick, why did that happen? Everything in economics comes down to supply and demand. I would tell my students, if you get to a question, I usually would give students have to write an answer, not multiple choice. I'd say, if you get to a question, you have no clue, write down supply and demand. You'll get partial credit. And you know what? Not all the students did that. So don't know why. So what happened real fast after COVID hit is we being big-time decision makers like in the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve and economists, quite frankly, we were worried about what's a COVID going to do to our economy. We hadn't had a pandemic like that in about 100 years. You have to go back to the 1920s, the so-called Spanish flu. So our government, both on what we call the fiscal side and the monetary side, which means fiscal side means Congress and the president working together through the budget. Federal Reserve means they can manipulate interest rates. Pulled out the stops to try to keep the economy going. So what the Federal Reserve did is they don't directly control interest rates, but they influence them. They use their policy to push interest rates down. In fact, some of you may remember this because there's been so much attention recently on mortgage rates. Do you remember, some of you may remember, you may have taken advantage of it, we had got 30-year fixed rate mortgage rates under 3%. You could buy a house, borrow money at under 3% right after COVID. Unbelievable. Never happened in our history again. So people went out and bought a lot of homes. That's one reason why home prices jumped up, because we weren't building homes to keep pace with that. The other thing that the federal government did, and this was under both the first Trump administration and the Biden administration, they had Congress pass programs. They were under a variety of names, but the programs had the goal of pushing money into the economy, in the people's hands. Remember your stimulus checks, maybe, in the people's hands as well as businesses' hands. $7 trillion between those two administrations, so this is bipartisan, pushing the economy in a short period of time. So the bottom line is, people came out of COVID, they had money to spend, and yet businesses could not yet gear up to meet those buying intentions. And in economics, everything's supply and demand. If you've got people trying to buy more than what's available in our system of free prices, movement free prices are going to go up. And so we had a big jump there, as you can see there on the right-hand side, when inflation got up to 13%. Then the Federal Reserve in particular said, oh, we overdid it. So that's when they started to pump up interest rates, and that tended to squeeze out the inflation rate. Now, right now, we're down around 2.5%. The Fed's goal is to get us around 2%. So we have made progress on inflation, but again, that just means prices are still rising, but they're just not rising as fast. So, okay, okay, keep going. I'm not sure if okay. So how do people survive if all the time, every year, we're going to have higher prices? Obviously with earnings. If your earnings go up faster, what you're earning from pay, for example, work, that'd be a person's main earnings. If your earnings go up faster than prices, then you will get ahead. And I've given you a chart here, two charts, one for the nation, that's on the left-hand side, one for North Carolina. The data do not go out as long for North Carolina. And if the line here, the line is measuring the difference between earnings growth and price growth. So my point is, if your earnings go up by 5% over the past year, but inflation's 2.5%, you're still ahead of the game. You're still ahead of the game. And so the line represents that, measuring that difference. If the line is going down, that means that your earnings growth is less than price growth. If the line is going up, then your earnings growth is actually exceeding price growth. So you can see in right after COVID, 2021 on both slides, big drops, because that was when we were having this burst of inflation, caught policymakers off guard, and yet people's earnings were not keeping up. So that was really a bad time. And then we had the efforts by the Federal Reserve to reduce the inflation rate, which caused at one point, ultimately, for people to be in a situation where their earnings growth has exceeded price growth. And pretty much the same thing for North Carolina, although we don't have as recent data. Now, these are averages. This is average for all households across the country. People ask me, well, Walden, this is an average, and of course, no one's average. There are people of different income levels. Is this true for every income level? The answer is no. And you might expect what the answer is going to be. For people of lower income, they've not been in a situation where their earnings have kept pace with inflation. People of higher incomes, they have been in a situation where their earnings growth has kept pace with inflation. So there are differences there in terms of where you are on the income spectrum. And like most things, it's better to be on the upper end than at the lower end. So that's the way to look, for your own personal knowledge, that's the way to look at inflation. Look at if inflation over the last year turns out to be, I don't think we got the final numbers yet for 2025, but let's say if it turns out to be 3% for the last year for 2025, and if your earnings went up, say 5%, then at least you've kept pace. I mean, you're not happy with the 3%, you've kept pace. Okay, tariffs. And you might be saying, where's the Monroe information in this? Well, all of this affects everyone. I mean, most of my presentation is here on nationwide impacts, because it doesn't matter if you're in Monroe, doesn't matter if you're in Indiana or Ohio. Inflation is going to impact. Inflation is not there can be minor differences, but inflation generally is not different for one state or one locality versus another locality. So it doesn't matter where we are. So this all affects Monroe just like it affects everyone else. Let me talk about another hot topic, and that is tariffs. First of all, what is a tariff? Let me check my time, and I'm good. Yeah, 9:17. Okay. Where's my 9:45? Right? Okay, I got till 9:45. What is a tariff? We've heard about. Again, I've been at this economic stuff for 50 years. We never had discussions about tariffs in the past. They were an ancient technique. You had to go back to the 1930s to see the United States imposing tariffs as a policy initiative. Things have changed. The current administration has been using tariffs as a policy tool. The administration wants to cause us as consumers to buy more things from U.S. manufactured bases. The administration wants there to be more manufacturing of products in the U.S. than in foreign countries. And the administration has said, actually the president has stated this, that he said he understood after World War II, pretty much every country in the world was devastated. The U.S. was about the only standing country. We wanted to help out those other countries, particularly Europe. And among other things, we did the Marshall Plan. But one of the things that we did, which a lot of people are not aware of, is we said, you know what, we are going to let you, this would be, say, the U.S. speaking to Europe, we're going to let you put high tariffs on our products to make it more expensive for the U.S. manufactured products to be bought by your folks. You can put high tariffs on our products. We're not going to put any tariffs on your products. The notion here was to try to help, in this case, I'm just using an example, the European economy to revive, their manufacturing sector to revive. And that's pretty much the status of tariffs that held until very recently. And the Trump administration has said, hey, it's what, 70 years since World War II, why are we still doing this? So the Trump, and I don't take political stances here, and don't read anything by what I'm saying to supporting or not supporting. But the Trump, first of all, what is a tariff? A tariff is a tax on an import. So if you buy some wine from France, which my wife does, and I don't drink any, but she drinks for both of us. No, she's fine. She's fine. I'm just teasing. That's why she didn't come with me to hear those jokes. No. Where was I? You buy wine from France. There'll be a tariff on that. There could be a tariff on it. Probably is. She does a wine buy. So, but who pays that tariff? Now, this is where I will say that there's a difference in some of the statements out of the administration. They're just not true. Administration, many of the administration, and I won't say whom, will talk like it's the foreign exporter that's paying the tariff. No, it's the U.S. importer. It's the U.S. importer. And what do U.S. importers likely end up doing, and they are doing it. Now, we've had a new study from the Federal Reserve that showed they're doing this almost to 100% degree. They will take that, since they have to pay that tariff, that's an extra cost to them. What does a business do when they have extra costs? They pass it on to the consumer. So part of the reason that we've actually had, if you remember, I'm not going to go back in slides, in the last couple of years, we actually had a little bit of an uptick in the inflation rate. That's, in the view of most economists, that's due to tariffs, because businesses are passing those tariffs on to consumers. So, but again, I do want to be fair that the administration is doing this because they want to encourage more factories to be built here in the U.S. They want more workers working in those factories, and we buying less from other countries. The latest data, though, I just did a newspaper column on this. The latest data, however, showed in 2025, none of that happened. We actually, our trade deficit, which is the difference between how much we buy from other countries versus how much we sell, actually went up in 2025. There does not appear, I know the president is talking about some future investments, but their future foreign direct investment has not gone up. And actually factory employment has gone down, I think, by 80,000 last year. So again, I'm just giving you the facts. I'm going to let you make the judgment. So anyway, the issue here is that we end up paying the tariffs, and then the question is it worth it? What are we getting out of that? And I'll let you all decide about that. Okay, let me move on. Housing market. Actually got some good news here about the housing market. First of all, here in North Carolina, these are North Carolina numbers, yes. And probably as you look around here in Monroe County, you'll see this. There's a lot of housing construction going on. And the best way to solve higher housing prices, again, remember supply and demand, is to do what? More supply. More supply, that puts downward pressure on prices. In North Carolina, I don't have these for Monroe, for Union County, but I'm sure the same trend. You can see that we've had a very significant upward trend. The bouncing around there is that housing, these are based on housing permits, very susceptible to weather, as you might expect. But we've had an upward trend in housing production in North Carolina, which is good, exactly what we want. Mortgage rates. We're actually beginning to see a little bit, not a dramatic, but a little bit of a reduction if you look at the far right-hand side in mortgage rates. In fact, the other day, they went under, 30-year fixed went under 6%, first time in several years. So we're headed in the right direction there. And I'll talk about the future of interest rates in a minute. And then next slide, I think we're going it this way. This is a map or graph of median price of a house. Remember I told you that there's big impact after COVID with the low interest rates, people running out to buy houses, pushing up housing prices. You can see that, find 2020 at the bottom there. Look at the big jump in housing prices right after COVID. We've seen to have leveled off, where there's been some up and down, but recently the trend has been downward. So that's good. So there's been some moderation. Next slide. There is, and the same thing here, this is in the Charlotte metro area. You can see, if you look to the far right-hand side, you can see some downward trend in housing prices. Again, the big jump took place after COVID. Next slide. Now, there is something called the Housing Affordability Index. I won't get into the weeds of how that's calculated, but it takes into effect the average price of a house, average mortgage rate, income of the buyer, et cetera. And you can see a big drop. If this is going down, it means housing affordability for the average buyer is getting worse. And you can see a big drop there from roughly March of 2025 to May of 2025. But it's gone up recently. So things look to be getting better for the buyer. Not perfect, but certainly getting better for the buyer in the housing market. And I would argue that's probably seen here in beautiful Union County. Okay, let me talk about the Federal Reserve. I love talking about the Federal Reserve because I would love talking about the Federal Reserve with my students. I would introduce it by saying to them, although I had changed this over time because students didn't carry cash, but I'd say to them, if you want to buy something, you got to take out your wallet and spend it, and you've got less money to spend on other things. And I said, wouldn't it be nice if there was some place that you could work or maybe earn a living where you never had to deduct? If you write a check, you have to deduct that amount on your checking account. Wouldn't it be nice if you could work for someone where they never have to deduct any spending? They just keep spending as much as you want. And I'd say, well, if you want to work for someone like that, it's the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve never deducts anything. They can create money. They are in charge of creating money. You look at if you do carry cash around still like I do, it's Federal Reserve note. So that's one power the Federal Reserve has. The other power the Federal Reserve has is they have not control, but they influence interest rates. They control a couple of interest rates directly. One of them is called the interest rate, the federal funds rate, which is the interest rate that a bank has to pay another bank for a loan. Loan banks actually do loan money between each other. They do directly control that. And usually when the Federal Reserve, say, moves that rate up, federal funds rate, other interest rates, not in a lockstep, but other interest rates tend to move up, and then vice versa if they move rates down. So the Federal Reserve is very, very influential. Next slide. And what they are actually Congress set up the Federal Reserve in 1913, right after the Great Depression. They amended the charter of Congress. Previously, the Federal Reserve's job was pretty much one: regulate the banks, make sure and provide them with enough money. Two things. After the Great Depression, the 30s, Congress came back and revised that and added to it and said, Federal Reserve, we want you to do two other things in addition to the ones you've already got. Create an economy where inflation is low and unemployment's low. It's called a dual mandate. So the Federal Reserve is mandated to use their policy to try to keep both of those, in unemployment and inflation, low. Unfortunately, it's hard to do both because one policy may help one of those and maybe actually hurt the other. So the Federal Reserve is always having to choose between what's more important: keeping the inflation rate low or keeping the unemployment rate low. Next slide. And the Fed's recent, if the Fed is worried about inflation, for example, they want to cool the economy down. They want to motivate people not to spend as much. And so they'll raise their interest rate. If they are worried about unemployment being too high, they'll do the opposite. They'll lower their interest rate because they want to juice the economy so that there's more jobs out there and the unemployment rate will come down. So they're caught twixt in between. This is a chart that shows you a picture of their policy in recent years. This is the federal funds rate. And notice after, if you can see 2000 at the bottom there on the year identification, you can see the big drop, the gigantic drop in their federal funds rate. That was when they were trying to juice the economy. That's when you got sub 3% loans for 30-year fixed mortgages. But it also contributed to the inflation, which then once they figured out, they went the opposite direction. You can see between 2000 and 2010 where that rate went up. And then once they squeezed out the inflation, they came down, but they've been around a little bit. Right now, they have been in a modest reducing their federal funds rate because they think they've got. This is where they've had to choose. I think they're right now more worried about unemployment than the inflation rate. They got the inflation rate close to their 2% goal. It's around 2.5, whereas the unemployment rate is now above between 4 and 4.5%, probably a little higher than what they would like. Next slide. Let's go to the next slide, and let's go to the next slide. Okay. Again, I got to mix a little bit of politics here, but not taking sides. The President Trump, has been very critical, as you probably know, of the Federal Reserve. He's not the first. Most presidents will find something wrong with the Federal Reserve. I can remember George H.W. Bush, probably one of the nicest person. I mean, I've never met him, but my view of him is he was viewed as a very nice person, very mild-mannered person, not one to get overly heated in anything. After he lost the 92 election to Bill Clinton, he had a press conference. Some of you may remember this. He just ranted and raved against the Federal Reserve and blamed them. This was when Alan Greenspan was the chair of the Federal Reserve. Blamed them for his election loss because he said the Federal Reserve didn't want me reelected, so they didn't lower interest rates. And he was just heated, just very on George H.W. Bush-like. So Jimmy Carter, same thing. He complained about the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates. So this is not new. The President Trump is saying they like it. He wants Federal Reserve to lower interest rates even more, et cetera. The problem for all those presidents, including the current president, they have no power over the Federal Reserve other than nominating someone to be on the Federal Reserve Board. And it has to be confirmed by Congress. After that, the Federal Reserve is on its own. It is an independent agency. It doesn't even get a budget from Congress. It gets money from member banks who join the Federal Reserve, which most big banks do. So the president has no direct control over the Federal Reserve, and that was on purpose. The framers of the Federal Reserve wanted to take the Federal Reserve out of politics and wanted them to be independent. Now, we do have, or will have soon, a change of the guard between the for the chair of the Federal Reserve for the last, 8 years, Jerome Powell. He's not up here. Already he's been lost. Jerome Powell has been chair of the Federal Reserve. He's actually appointed initially by President Trump. And he could have he could have stayed on the Federal Reserve Board. In fact, he may stay on the Federal Reserve Board. But I think he's retiring, just getting out of it. He's had enough. The pressure job. And President Trump has appointed the gentleman on the right, Kevin Walsh, to be the next chair of the Federal Reserve. And I know President Trump has made somewhat joking comments about, I'm expecting Kevin to lower interest rates, and if he doesn't, I think President Trump jokingly said, I'm going to sue him. But again, President has no power to do that. Plus, the chair of the Federal Reserve, there's a 15-member board of governors, that make all the policy decisions. They all vote. The chair has one vote, just like everyone else does. So Kevin Walsh can't go in there and dictate what the Federal Reserve is going to do. So it's going to be very interesting to see when he, out of the gate, there's always a question, does Federal Reserve meet? I think that they meet about every 6 or 7 weeks. There's always speculation about what they will do. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do at their first meeting under Mr. Walsh. But they are totally independent. Their job is to look at what the best interest rate policy is, what the best monetary policy is for the economy, again, to meet those two goals of keeping inflation low and unemployment low. Okay, next slide. Let's see, okay, don't stay here. Another influencer, we always have to watch the Federal Reserve, especially when they're meeting and if they're making a goal of changing interest rates. The other thing we have to look at from Washington in terms of influence on the economy is what we call fiscal policy. Monetary policy is the Federal Reserve. Fiscal policy is primarily out of the budget, which, of course, to get a budget, we got to get the Congress to vote yes, and then the president to sign that, unless there's an overwhelming if he vetoes it, he can be, if 2/3 of Congress says he can get it. The big beautiful bill that you're aware of, that was H.R. 1, it's been referred to as a big beautiful bill that was passed last year. It's a big bill, and it has a lot of factors in it, but one of which there are a lot of tax cuts. It's a very pro-business bill, and there's a lot of speculation by economists, and they factor these into their forecasts, that the big beautiful bill, once it starts to kick in more and more over this year, will boost economic growth. So we haven't seen it yet in the GDP numbers, although we don't have any first quarter GDP numbers yet. But that's one to watch, to see if we get some upward trend in GDP growth, which should lead to lower unemployment, which might lead to higher salaries, et cetera, as the year goes on. So something to watch. Next slide. Okay, so we got to that time now where I'll give you my forecast for what it's worth. Let me check my time here. 9:35. I'm supposed to go to 9:45. Is that right? Yes. I think I've got it right here. Let me just double check. Yes. Okay, so a few more minutes before we take Q&A. Notice I got the Groundhog on there. These are just my forecasts. I think they're pretty much in line. Quite frankly, I look at other people's forecasts, and usually if you do get consensus among economists. Interestingly, there doesn't seem to be a great deal. I mean, you're not hearing, or at least I'm not hearing. You're not hearing economists out there, or any economists saying, "Oh, we're headed to a bad recession." No. That's sometimes you hear that, but that's not what I'm hearing now. So I think this is pretty run-of-the-mill, sort of average forecast that you would see from an economist. GDP growth, number one, you see those are positive numbers. If there were negative numbers, that would mean recession, depression. Growth somewhere between 2% and 3%, which is about what we've been averaging. Not anything to write home for, certainly not a record, but a decent growth rate. If the big beautiful bill kicks in, we could see it a little bit higher. If for some reason there's some speculation as the midterm elections get closer, will the president maybe make some alterations with tariffs? I mean, he's already being forced to make some with the Supreme Court ruling, but he's replacing the tariffs that the Supreme Court said he could not impose constitutionally with other tariffs. But there's some speculation that I've read where maybe his advisors will say to him, look, these tariffs Contrary to what you say, that it's the exporters that are paying them. They're not. The importers are, and they're passed on to consumers. That's hurting us in the inflationary. That they may scale the tariffs back, or they may change. They may not make sweeping tariffs. They may exempt certain foods, for example, or construction materials. That's been a factor. Tariffs have been a factor in construction costs, et cetera. So I think we need to watch that. And if those things happen, we may see that interest rate, that growth rate, maybe go from 2 to 3 to 3 to 4. Number two, come back. Yeah, jobless rate. I think we're around between 4.5%. I'm going to say 4.5%. We're going to continue to have. And then the inflation rate, I think we're going to be stuck in this 2.5 to 3%, unless the tariffs are altered to make them less onerous, to make businesses less needing to pass those costs on. We could see those going down. Again, remember, this is not a bad inflation rate where we are. The Fed's goal is 2%, but we like to get it closer to 2% than the 2.5. All right, next slide. Okay. There's always a lot more to worry about than what I have talked about. So let me just go over this list with you. Tariffs. When will they be altered? Where will they end? I think that's an issue. That's one I'm watching very closely. AI on jobs. I mentioned that AI is going to have an impact on jobs. The question is, which group of jobs will be most adversely impacted, and will AI create enough new jobs to counter those? So definitely think about this. Number three, this AI in the stock market, I only put that up there is that, of course, we've got other things going on right now that are affecting the stock market, oil prices. But the big run that AI, that we had on the stock market where it got up to over 50,000, many economists think that was AI-driven. There was a lot of excitement about AI, some anticipation AI is going to increase productivity by businesses. It's going to increase profitability. All those are factors that would push the stock market up. There was some concern about maybe the stock market was overdoing it. I'm not a stock market forecaster. I don't try. I use Milton Friedman's answer, late economist Milton Friedman, who when asked what the stock market's going to do in the future, and he said, well, I've got a perfect answer. I've been studying this for 40 years. I know exactly what the stock market's going to do. And the audience was on the edge of their chairs. He said, the stock market will fluctuate. And that's always my answer. I know my limits. But anyway, that's something to point out. I think there's been a lot of interaction between AI and the stock market. Federal Reserve policy, are they going to continue? I think they've been focusing more on jobs than on interest rates or on inflation. Again, what's their policy, particularly under the chair? Although, again, he just gets one vote. Is it going to be dramatically different? I don't think so. I think it's probably going to be continued, the pace of interest rate cuts that happen under Jerome Powell. And the president will make some negative comments about that, but there's nothing he can do. Consumer solvency and sentiment, I do think we need to continue to watch consumer sentiment and debt loads, as I pointed out. Those could potentially be big negatives for the economy in terms of reducing retail sales. Government shutdowns, just hope we don't have them. That, for me, it means I don't have as much data to work with. That's why I get mad. Foreign conflicts, do I need to go further? Now, last thing I want to talk here is about two things that I get often asked, so I'll go ahead and get to them. Social Security. I've been on Social Security now 10 years. Many of you may be on Social Security or looking forward to Social Security, and you may have heard that Social Security's got a problem. Social Security has stated this, they've not hidden this, by early 2030s, I think it's 2022 or 2023, one of those years, they're not going to have enough money coming in to make the payments they've promised. And I think the number is that if nothing changes, they'll have to cut their payments initially by 25%. After another year, they're going to have to cut them by another 25%. Now, why is this happening? Very simple, demographics. My age group, 55 and over, we're just growing and growing and growing in numbers. We're living longer. The young age group, about the birth rate has cratered. We're not, and who is it that pays in? We pay in, Social Security recipients pay in. when we're working. Once we retire, we get money out. We stop paying in. So who do we rely on to pay in? We rely on people who are working. And if we've got less production, if you will, of new workers, that's going to affect what's flowing into the pot. And I do need to say this, probably all of you know this, because I had a relative who called me recently from, she's one of my wife's cousins from upstate New York, and she was just ranting and raving, and she was worried about Social Security cuts, and she pretty much lives off them. And she says, they want to take my money. And I explained to her, I said, Sue, it's not your money. It's all put into a pot. Your money's not over here in a separate pot that says Sue. It's a big pot. Everyone's Social Security money goes into that pot, and then there's a formula for how much you get. I didn't make much progress with her. I think the last thing she says is, who's taking my money? So I try. But anyway, we've been down this road before. If any of you, probably some of you are old enough maybe to remember the early 80s under Ronald Reagan. Same exact problem. What did Reagan do? He appointed a commission under Alan Greenspan, who wasn't head of the Fed then, and said, work out a new plan. And he got all we had representatives from Congress, Senate, labor leaders, others, a whole group, and they hammered out a new solution, which resulted in Social Security being saved, but Social Security tax rates went up, and some payments, some got less. Usually, mainly higher income people. Is that going to happen again with this? Yes, it's going to happen again. Whomever's president around 2031, it'll be time to call up a new commission. They'll do a new work through, and I'll guarantee you that it'll involve higher Social Security tax rates and lower benefits. Now, some of you might be saying, why won't they just go ahead and do it now? Have the commission now. The reason is simple. What politician wants to be on a committee where he or she knows the outcome is going to be recommending higher taxes and lower benefits? That's a killer. So we will save Social Security. There's no way 50 million people are not going to be heard. We will save Social Security. But it's just going to be a long. So don't worry. Don't be like my friend, what is she? I guess an in-law. I don't claim her. Sue. Okay. National debt, I get asked this all the time. Walden, what's the solution to national debt? Again, I don't know. I mean, there are certainly possible solutions. And you know, it wasn't that long ago where we balanced the budget. I don't know if you remember this, 1990s. 1990s, in a lot of ways, was a glorious decade. We actually ended the 1990s running budget surpluses. And one of the reasons that happened is that the Congress passed a new law internally that said if anyone recommends a program that we can't fund out of existing revenues, they're going to have to go along with that recommendation. They're going to have to recommend some way of raising the revenue, and that killed off a lot of programs that potentially would have cost more money. So it can be done, but it's just a matter of will that we don't see that. So there are all uncertainties here. There's always going to be uncertainties, but I will say, my last statement here, I think one of the reasons why North Carolina, as well as Union County, as your mayor was very clearly talking, is so good on attracting new businesses. I think it's been three years running, I think it is, that we have been rated the #1 state for business. I forget the name of the group, but it's not a wacko group. It's a reliable group. We've been rated the #1 state for businesses 3 years in a row. Last year we had the largest increase in jobs on an annual basis we ever had. And I think, there are a whole bunch of factors here. Again, I've been here 50 years, but I'm not a native. And my wife is, well, obviously she's been here 50 years too. She's a native of upstate New York. One is our climate, our weather. When it snows, I tease Mary and I say, you ever wish you were back in near Buffalo? She looks at me, she doesn't even answer, she just gives me the look. But we have great climate. We have, in terms of the economy, we're on the East Coast. We have access to interstates up and down the East Coast. We have, now this might, some may view negatively, we have wages that are very competitive. We have a lower inflation rate than the national rate. Cost of living is about 10% lower here. This is a statewide average, about 10% lower in North Carolina than it is the average for the country. And then the other thing I'll say, and this tiptoes into politics, but I'm not a obviously political person, but I've observed, although we frequently have divided government, like we do now, we have Josh Stein, governor, and we have a Republican legislature. And they disagree on things, and you watch it. But boy, when it comes to economic development, they're right there for each other. They agree, and I think that's a factor too. So let me 2 minutes passed. Let me stop, and this is the Q&A time. Right? Where's my director?
I'm right here.
Oh, right here. You're right here. Thank you.
And can we have a round of applause for Dr. Walden?
Thank you. Thank you.
So we have gone a touch long, so we are going to pivot away from the Q&A, but Dr.
Okay.
Walden will be available after the program to answer any individual questions you may have for him.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you all very much. Thank you for being attentive. I sometimes get booed. Okay. Thank you.
And very quickly, before we continue with the presentation, there are a few folks that we want to thank and acknowledge, those individuals that are doing some of the behind-the-scenes work to make an event like this happen. First and foremost, the team here at the Dowd Theater. How lucky we are to have an amenity like this in our community. So thank you to the team here at the Dowd. To the planning committee, the team working behind the scenes to make this event happen, Donna, Teresa, Sydney, Jason, thank you for all of your efforts in bringing this information. And we want to thank Jason Wally, Chain Reaction Studios. He's in the back filming this, so all of this information is going to be available, I believe, on the city's website via video. So thank you to Jason. And without further ado, we'd like Teresa and Donna to come out because we've got a very special presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was wonderful, everyone. And we have some things we really want to cover that we had spoke about earlier. Again, I'm Teresa Campo, and this is Donna O'Keefe. She is our existing business and industry manager. We are the Office of Economic Development here for the City of Monroe. So we want to share some stories about you. I had the privilege last week to visit in Washington, D.C., and the message was clear. Our great country is a nation built on resilience, innovation, and community. It is that spirit that drives Monroe to success. America is celebrating our 250th years in the making. And as we gather to talk about our future economy, we reflect on how far Monroe has come. From the early days of wood and craftsmanship to today's advanced manufacturing built on steel, iron, and innovation. That transformation demonstrates Monroe's ability and why we are a good jobs, great cities. Donna O'Keefe researched our partner companies, and we have a brief presentation that we want to share with you to celebrate some birthdays. But we do want to recognize some very significant birthdays in this 250th year. And that's Charlotte Pipe and Foundry, who serves on our Economic Development Advisory Board, is celebrating 125 years. Coca-Cola Consolidated is celebrating 124 years. That's enough. And right next to them is our own LD Davis, which I hope that some of you had had an opportunity to go by and see their presentation in their video. Please do. And they'll be celebrating 100 years this year. Another point that I wanted to bring up about LD Davis is they were actually formed in the original 13 states of Pennsylvania, and then came down to North Carolina, another one of the colonial states. So that made that very, very significant to all of us. We are going to share this presentation. This is your story. story. And if we could hear each individual story, it would talk about how we went from wood to steel. And that is an amazing story. But as we promised, we didn't forget your gift. First, 6 of you have something under your, we don't know where they're at, but they're under your chairs. If you'll reach, 6 of you have received gift certificates to some of our attractions, including the Science Center, the new 1936 Club, or some of the clubhouse. So we hope that when you get that, you can say, hey, I got that. But everyone else, we also have something for you too. Again, I want to thank the Union County Chamber of Commerce for partnering with us and our sponsors. And the Electricities of North Carolina were instrumental in sponsoring this piece for us. This is an original piece from a local artist, and Bill Colt. As you can see, it celebrates all the elements of downtown and this 16th day. So each of you, when you leave, you will have a numbered, signed print from the artist, limited edition, 250. We do have some special ones that we have pinned for our mayor. He has one of these. If he wants to come up, he'll show his. So we hope that you enjoy these prints. They will be in the back for you, but Mayor, this is yours, and you got number 1 of our print there. Well, so that one's yours. And so we would ask our city council to please stay behind, and please feel free to speak to our Dr. Walden. Again, that video will be posted as soon as possible. And Teresa and Donna and Clayton and the mayor and the city manager's office, our city council, so many of us, we just want to thank everyone for coming. Clayton has his for the chamber too, for him, and he has his. And just thank you. We celebrate you, 250 years in the making. And thank you for being a part of this summit, and thank you for all you do and to make our community a good job, great city. Monroe works because of you. Who got their tickets?